The exact dollar amount of my life insurance policy was the last thing flashing in my husband's eyes as I choked on my own blood. He and his innocent assistant had stood perfectly safe on the cliffside, watching my car become a raging inferno. I should be ash. Instead, I woke up 3 days before my orchestrated demise, staring at the black card he used to fund his lethal betrayal. A resurrected heiress doesn't cry over spilt blood. She freezes the corporate empire. I left a single penny in his account and took a front row seat for his impending ruin. The smell of burning rubber and copper was still searing the back of my throat when I gasped, my body shooting up from the mattress. My hands clawed at my chest, expecting to feel the crushed ribs, the jagged metal of the steering column that had pinned me in my burning Mercedes. But there was only the soft, cool touch of Egyptian cotton and the rhythmic, steady beating of my own heart. I was hyperventilating, staring wildly around the room. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the master bedroom in my Manhattan penthouse. There was no smoke. There was no cliffside. And most importantly, there was no Christian standing above me, his arm wrapped casually around Chloe's waist as he watched the flames consume my life. My trembling hands reached for the phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up, glaring in the morning light. October 14th, 2025. I dropped the phone as if it had burned me. October 14th, 3 days before the tragic accident on the Pacific Coast Highway. 3 days before Christian Hayes, the man I had given my heart, my family's name, and my father's company to, would orchestrate my murder just 24 hours after I signed over the controlling shares of Sander Enterprises to him. I pressed my palms against my eyes, a hysterical, breathless laugh escaping my lips. I was back. Somehow, impossibly, the universe had hit the rewind button. The searing agony of my past death faded, replaced instantly by a cold, crystalline fury that froze the tears before they could even fall. "Linda, darling, are you awake?" The voice was like a physical blow. The bedroom door pushed open, and there he was. Christian. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal Tom Ford suit, bought with my money, naturally. His dark hair was styled effortlessly, and he carried a silver tray with a single espresso and a fresh croissant. The picture of a devoted, loving husband. It took every ounce of willpower, every shred of my sanity, not to leap out of bed and tear his throat out with my bare hands. I remembered the exact expression on his face as he looked down at my dying body. It hadn't been grief. It had been relief. "Morning," I managed to say, my voice raspy. I cleared my throat, forcing the corners of my mouth to turn up into a sleepy smile. "I just woke up. You looked like you were having a nightmare," he said smoothly, setting the tray on my lap and leaning in to kiss my forehead. The touch of his lips made my skin crawl. "You're shivering." "Just a bad dream," I lied, looking directly into his hazel eyes. "I dreamt I lost everything," Christian chuckled, a rich, reassuring sound that used to make me melt. "Impossible. You're Linda Sander. You own the world. Speaking of which..." He paused, his tone shifting to that careful, businesslike cadence I now recognized as sheer manipulation. "The proxy papers for the board meeting, did you get a chance to sign them? My lawyers need to file them by tomorrow, so I can finalize the acquisition in your absence." "Ah, yes, the proxy papers. The document that essentially handed him the keys to the Sander kingdom, making my existence entirely obsolete. In my past life, I had signed them right here, drinking that very espresso, completely blind to the fact that I was signing my own death warrant. I haven't looked at them yet, I said softly, taking a slow sip of the coffee. My head is pounding this morning. I'll review them this afternoon before you leave for your trip. A flicker of annoyance crossed his perfectly sculpted face. Gone so fast, a normal person would have missed it. But I wasn't normal anymore. I was a ghost, occupying a living body. Of course, take your time. He smiled, though his jaw was tight. I really wish I didn't have to go to Chicago this weekend. A whole weekend at a dreary tech conference while you're here all alone. It breaks my heart. Chicago. Right. In my past life, I believed him. I later found out from the police report detailing his alibi that he was actually at the St. Regis in Bora Bora, sipping champagne with Chloe Simmons, his timid, hard-working secretary. He had flown her out on a private jet chartered under one of my subsidiary shell companies. It's fine, Christian. Business is business. I smiled, tracing the rim of the espresso cup. You go. Have a productive weekend. I love you, Linda, he whispered, squeezing my hand before turning to leave. I know, I whispered back to the empty room as the door clicked shut. I know exactly how much you love me. I threw the blankets off. I didn't have much time. I had exactly 8 hours before his flight to strip a man who thought he was a king down to an absolute peasant. By 10 a.m., I was sitting in the mahogany-paneled boardroom of Croft and Associates, my family's private wealth management firm. Henry Croft, a man who had been my late father's closest confidant, sat across from me, looking deeply concerned. Linda, you're asking me to execute a total financial lockdown, Henry said, adjusting his reading glasses as he stared at the mountain of paperwork I had just slapped onto his desk. Revoking Christian's signatory rights, transferring all liquid assets from your joint accounts into the Blind Sander Family Trust, and canceling all secondary lines of credit. This is aggressive. It's necessary, Henry, I said, my voice ice cold. I've been auditing the accounts. Look at page 4. Henry flipped to the page, his bushy eyebrows rising toward his hairline. A $450,000 charge at Van Cleef & Arpels? 3 weeks ago? I assumed you bought a new necklace for the gala. I wore my mother's pearls to the gala, I replied. And the $120,000 charge for the private aviation charter to French Polynesia tomorrow. The reservations at the St. Regis? Henry's face hardened. He was a man of the old guard. Loyalty to the Sander bloodline meant everything to him. I see. I will draft the divorce papers immediately. No. I stopped him, holding up a hand. Not yet. If I file for divorce now, he has grounds to fight for half under our current prenup, and it will take months of legal battles. Worse, he will know I'm onto him. I need him blind, Henry. I need him to feel invincible right up until the moment he crashes. What exactly do you want me to do, Linda? Move everything, I instructed, tapping a manicured fingernail against the wood table. Every single dollar in the joint, checking, savings, and investment portfolios, lock it behind the Sander Trust. As for his credit cards, cancel his platinum and gold cards immediately. Flag them as lost. And the Centurion card? Henry asked, referring to the infamous American Express black card Christian loved to flash around to prove he had made it. It was tied directly to a massive liquid checking account. I smiled, a sharp, humorless expression. That's the trap. If the card gets declined for fraud or being canceled, he'll just call the bank and throw a tantrum. He might even figure out I'm behind it and rush home before he makes a fool of himself. I don't want that. I want him humiliated. I want the card active, but I want the linked account drained. Drained to zero? No, I said, leaning forward. Drained to exactly 1 cent, $0.01. Henry looked at me, a slow, appreciative smirk forming on his aged face. A declined card due to insufficient funds of a single penny. The ultimate insult. It tells the merchant the card is perfectly valid, but the holder is utterly broke. Exactly. Executed at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, right when he lands. Consider it done, Linda. Leaving the firm, the crisp October air felt different. It felt like freedom. My phone buzzed in my designer purse. It was a text from Christian, boarding the flight to Chicago now. Missing you already, my queen. Did you sign those proxy papers? I typed back quickly, leaning against the door of my waiting town car. So sorry, darling. Got caught up with a migraine. I'll sign them first thing Monday morning when you get back. Have a great flight. I watched the read receipt pop up. I could almost picture the vein throbbing in his temple. He needed those signatures to complete his hostile takeover from the inside. But he couldn't push too hard without looking suspicious. He would have to wait until Monday. A Monday that, for him, would never come. Instead of going home, I directed my driver to a discreet office building in Soho. I needed one more piece to complete the puzzle. I walked into the office of Leo Harrington, a private investigator known for his utter lack of morals and highly effective surveillance techniques. Ms. Sander, Leo said, kicking his boots off his desk. To what do I owe the pleasure? I need real-time eyes, ears, and video on my husband, Christian Hayes, I said, dropping a thick manila envelope of cash on his desk. He's landing in JFK in 2 hours. He didn't go to Chicago. He's heading to a luxury resort or hotel here in New York or flying out international. Find him. And when he tries to pay for his little vacation, I want a live feed of his face. Leo peeked inside the envelope, gave a low whistle, and grabbed his jacket. You'll have a front row seat to the premiere, boss. It was 5:30 p.m. I was sitting on my velvet sofa in the penthouse, a glass of vintage Pinot Noir in my hand. My iPad was propped up on the coffee table, currently displaying a crystal-clear, discreetly angled live video feed. Leo was worth every penny. Christian hadn't gone to Bora Bora after all. Perhaps he saved that for the post-murder celebration. Instead, he had taken a private car straight from a fake terminal drop-off to the Waldorf Astoria in Manhattan. The feed showed the opulent, gold-gilded lobby of the hotel, and there he was. Christian, looking like a king in his bespoke suit, standing at the VIP check-in desk. Clinging to his arm, looking up at him with wide, manufactured adoration, was Chloe Simmons. She was wearing a blatant display of my money, a Chanel tweed jacket and a Birkin bag I recognized from a recent bank statement. She was giggling, whispering something in his ear. Reservation for Hayes. Christian's voice came through the audio feed, smooth and arrogant. The presidential suite. I believe it was booked under my corporate account. Ah, yes, Mr. Hayes. Welcome to the Waldorf, the impeccably dressed concierge replied, typing away at his keyboard. We have you and Ms. Simmons down for a 3-night stay in the presidential suite. We've also arranged the private couple's spa package and the Dom Perignon upon arrival as requested. Perfect! Christian smirked, turning to kiss Chloe's cheek. She practically purred. I'll just need a card for the incidentals and the remainder of the suite balance, sir, the concierge said politely. The total for the weekend comes to $38,500. Christian didn't even blink. He reached into his tailored breast pocket and pulled out the heavy, titanium black Centurion card. He slapped it onto the marble counter with a resounding, arrogant clack. Keep it open. We might hit the boutiques tomorrow, Christian boasted, winking at Chloe. who let out an excited squeal. I took a slow sip of my wine, leaning closer to the screen. Here it comes. The concierge took the card with both hands, a model of professional deference. He swiped it through the terminal. A sharp, unpleasant beep echoed in the quiet VIP area. The concierge frowned slightly, looking at the screen. My apologies, Mr. Hayes. It seems there was a read error. Let me try the chip. He inserted the card. The machine thought for a second. Beep. Declined. The concierge's professional smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Sir, the card has been declined. Christian let out a condescending scoff. Declined? That's impossible. It's a black card, my friend. There is no limit. Your machine is broken. Run it again. I assure you, sir, the terminal is functioning perfectly. The concierge replied, his tone cooling ever so slightly at Christian's attitude. The error code is not for a fraud block or a damaged chip. It is a code 51. And what the hell does that mean? Christian demanded, his voice rising, drawing the attention of a wealthy elderly couple checking in next to them. Chloe shifted uncomfortably, her grip on his arm loosening. Code 51 means insufficient funds, Mr. Hayes, the concierge said, his voice carrying clearly across the quiet lobby. Insufficient funds? Christian barked, slamming his hand on the marble counter. Do you know who I am? I am the CEO of Sander Enterprises. I have millions in that account. Run it again, you incompetent fool! The concierge's eyes narrowed. The deference was gone, replaced by the icy courtesy reserved for unruly, broke patrons. He turned the payment terminal around so Christian could see the digital display. I have run it 3 times, Mr. Hayes. As you can see, the bank's automated system is showing your available balance. It is exactly 1 cent, $0.01. A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the desk. Through the screen, I watched the color rapidly drain from Christian's face. He stared at the glowing green digits on the terminal as if they were written in an alien language. Available balance, 1 cent. 1 cent? Chloe repeated, her sweet, breathy voice suddenly shrill. She looked at Christian, her eyes flashing with a sudden, very uninnocent panic. Dom, what is he talking about? You said this was all taken care of. Shut up, Chloe! Christian hissed, frantically patting his pockets. He pulled out a sleek leather wallet. Fine. The bank must be migrating servers. I'll use my platinum card. He tossed a silver Amex onto the counter. The concierge swiped it. Declined. Account canceled. Gold card. Declined. Account canceled. Visa signature. Declined. Account canceled. Christian was hyperventilating now, a thin sheen of sweat breaking out on his forehead. The elderly couple next to them was now openly staring, the woman whispering something behind her hand to her husband. 2 hotel security guards, noticing the rising tension and the elevated voices, began slowly walking toward the desk. Sir, the concierge said, sliding the useless plastic back across the counter. Unless you have an alternative form of payment, I am going to have to ask you to step aside. We have paying guests waiting. Paying guests? Christian roared, completely losing his carefully curated suave persona. I am a billionaire! Currently, sir, you are a man with 1 penny to his name. The concierge replied dryly. Security, please assist Mr. Hayes with his luggage. He is leaving. Don't touch me! Christian shoved the security guard's hand away. He snatched his phone from his pocket, his fingers trembling as he dialed a number. A second later, my phone lit up on the coffee table. Christian calling. I let it ring 3 times, savoring the sound, before I picked up. Hello? I answered, pouring maximum sweetness into my voice. Linda! Christian practically screamed into the phone. Through the iPad feed, I saw him pacing furiously near the hotel revolving doors, Chloe trailing behind him, looking thoroughly embarrassed and furious. Linda, what the hell is going on with the accounts? Christian, you sound stressed. Is everything okay in Chicago? Did you land safely? I'm not. He stopped himself, realizing he was about to blow his own cover. He took a ragged breath. Yes, Chicago is fine, but my cards, every single one of my cards is declining. The bank says I have 1 cent in my main account. Oh my God, really? I gasped, putting a hand over my mouth to stifle a laugh. That's terrible. Have you been hacked? I don't know. Did you do something? Did Henry do something? Honey, why would I do anything? I've been in bed with a migraine all day, I said, injecting the perfect amount of hurt into my tone. I don't even know how to access the trust protocols. You handle all that. Oh, sweetie, this must be that massive cybersecurity breach they were talking about on the news. The bank must have frozen everything to protect us. Frozen? Christian sounded like he was choking. Yes. Oh no, this is awful. Since it's Friday night, Henry is already out of the office on his yacht, out of signal range. We won't be able to fix this until Monday morning. I paused, letting the silence hang. How are you going to pay for your hotel in Chicago, baby? On the screen, Christian looked like he was about to have a stroke. Chloe was tugging on his sleeve, hissing, Dom, everyone is staring. Call an Uber. Do something. I'll figure it out, Christian ground out, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. I have to go, Linda. Okay, honey. Stay safe. I love you. He hung up. I watched the live feed as Christian Hayes, the man who had ordered my death just hours ago in a previous timeline, was escorted out of the Waldorf Astoria by 2 burly security guards, dragging his own Louis Vuitton luggage into the cold New York evening, utterly broke. I raised my glass of Pinot Noir to the iPad screen. Cheers, darling. Enjoy your weekend. The Waldorf Astoria's revolving doors spat Christian and his perfectly manicured mistress out onto Park Avenue like expired credit cards. The October wind had picked up, carrying the biting chill of a New York autumn. Through Leo's live surveillance feed, beamed directly to my iPad, I watched Christian's tailored Tom Ford suit suddenly look painfully inadequate against the cold. Dom, my feet are freezing, Chloe whined, her voice cutting through the ambient traffic noise on the audio feed. She was shifting her weight from one red-soled Louboutin to the other, her grip on her precious Birkin bag tightening. Call a car, call your driver, call someone. My driver is in Chicago, Chloe, remember? Christian snapped, running a hand through his aggressively styled hair, ruining the hold. He pulled out his phone, the screen illuminating his pale, panicked face. And I can't call an Uber. The app is linked to my Amex, which, in case you missed the public execution inside, is currently dead. Well, link it to another card. I don't have another card! He yelled, the sound echoing off the stone facades of the luxury hotels lining the street. A passing couple in evening wear gave them a wide berth. Christian lowered his voice, his jaw tight. Everything is frozen. Linda said there's a security breach at the bank. Chloe stared at him, her heavily lashed eyes blinking in disbelief. The facade of the adoring, innocent secretary was cracking at record speed. A security breach? Dom, you promised me a weekend in the presidential suite. You promised me a shopping spree at Bergdorf's tomorrow. We are standing on the sidewalk like tourists. Do you think I planned this? He hissed, stepping closer to her, his shadow looming over her petite frame. Do you think I enjoy being humiliated by a glorified bellhop? Just give me your card. We'll book a room at the plaza, and I'll wire you the money on Monday when Henry lifts the freeze. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. I leaned back on my velvet sofa, a cruel smile stretching across my face. Chloe took a physical step back, her perfectly glossed lips pressed into a thin line. My card? Dom, I'm a secretary. My credit limit is $3,000. The plaza is $2,000 a night. If I max out my card on a hotel room, how am I supposed to pay my rent? I just said I will pay you back on Monday. Christian's voice bordered on frantic. I am the CEO of Sander Enterprises. I am about to own the entire company. You don't own it yet, Chloe pointed out, her tone dripping with a sudden icy pragmatism that I had to admit I respected. She wasn't just a gold digger. She was a survivalist. Linda owns it, and right now, Linda has all the money, and you have 1 cent. Chloe, no, Dom. Chloe held up a manicured hand. She reached into her Chanel jacket, pulled out her own phone, and tapped the screen a few times. I'm calling an Uber to my apartment. Christian looked as if she had just slapped him. You're leaving me here? In the middle of Manhattan? I have luggage. You're a big boy, Dom. You'll figure it out. A black Lincoln Navigator pulled up to the curb. Chloe didn't even look back as she opened the door. Call me when your bank account has more than a penny in it. Until then, I'm spending my weekend in Brooklyn. The heavy door slammed shut. The SUV merged into traffic, leaving Christian Hayes standing entirely alone on Park Avenue, flanked by 3 large suitcases. I burst out laughing in the silence of my penthouse. The sheer, unadulterated poetry of it was intoxicating. The man who was willing to watch me burn to death for $1 billion couldn't even convince his mistress to front him cab fare. He spent the next hour making increasingly desperate phone calls. I watched him pace the pavement, his breath pluming in the cold air. He called Harrison Cole, a wealthy venture capitalist and a supposed close friend. Harrison's phone went straight to voicemail. I knew that because an hour earlier, I had my assistant leak a rumor to Harrison's wife that Christian was under federal investigation for insider trading. No one in our circle touched a radioactive asset. He called his brother, Liam, in Boston. Liam actually picked up. Liam, thank God! Christian breathed into the phone, shivering violently now. Listen, I need a massive favor. Can you wire me 10 grand? My accounts got locked due to a fraud alert and I'm stuck. Through the feed, Liam's voice was tinny and hesitant. Dom, 10 grand? Are you insane? It's Friday night. I can't initiate a wire until Monday. Plus, Sarah and I just closed on the new house. Our liquid cash is tied up. Can't Linda help you? Linda is unreachable. Christian lied through his teeth. Come on, Liam. Use your emergency fund. I'm literally on the street. I can't do it, Dom. I'm sorry. Go home to your penthouse. Why are you on the street anyway if you're in New York? I thought you were in Chicago. Christian hung up the phone. He stood there for a long moment, staring blankly at the screen. He was out of moves. He couldn't go back to our penthouse. He had explicitly told me he was in Chicago, and returning now would expose his lie and force a confrontation he wasn't prepared for. He needed me docile and trusting until Monday morning, so I would hand over the proxy papers. So, what does a fake billionaire do when he has nowhere to go and $0.01 to his name? He walks. For 2 hours, I watched via Leo's discreet trailing as Christian dragged hundreds of pounds of designer luggage down the avenues. He ended up at Port Authority bus terminal. The man who strictly flew private was forced to sit on a plastic chair under the glaring fluorescent lights, guarding his Louis Vuitton bags from the transient population. he bought a stale pretzel and a bottle of water, using the loose change he found at the bottom of his briefcase. He slept sitting up, his arms wrapped around his bags, jumping at every loud noise. It was a miserable, humiliating night, and it was exactly what he deserved. Monday morning arrived with the crisp, unforgiving clarity of a diamond. I dressed with meticulous care. I chose a structured, stark white Alexander McQueen suit, armor for the modern woman. My hair was pulled back into a severe, sleek chignon, and I wore the legendary Sander diamond tennis necklace, a piece Christian had always begged me to sell to diversify our portfolio. At 8:30 a.m., I stepped into the private elevator that led to the executive floor of Sander Enterprises. My assistant, a sharp, fiercely loyal woman named Nora, was waiting for me as the doors parted. "Good morning, Ms. Sander," Nora said, falling into step beside me, her tablet at the ready. "The board is assembling in Conference Room A. Mr. Croft is already there." "And my husband?" I asked smoothly. "Mr. Hayes entered the building 10 minutes ago. He bypassed his office and is currently waiting in the boardroom." Security noted he looked unkempt. I suppressed a smirk. I could only imagine. After spending 2 nights dodging vagrants in Port Authority and washing his face in a public restroom, Christian's pristine image must have taken a fatal hit. "Excellent," I murmured. "Let's begin." I pushed open the heavy glass doors of the boardroom. The chatter instantly died down. The board consisted of 6 people: Henry Croft, my uncle Arthur Sander, Cynthia Rothschild, a formidable private equity titan, and 3 other senior executives who had served under my father. And then there was Christian. He was sitting at the far end of the long mahogany table, nursing a cup of black coffee like it was a lifeline. He was still wearing the same Tom Ford suit from Friday, though it was now wrinkled and stained near the cuff. There were dark circles under his eyes, and a frantic, nervous energy radiated from him. When he saw me, he shot up from his chair. "Linda!" he exclaimed, his voice cracking slightly. He hurried toward me, attempting to pull me into an embrace. "Darling, I got an early flight back from Chicago. The whole weekend was a nightmare. The bank never fixed the freeze." I stepped back neatly, avoiding his touch. I smoothed the lapel of my white jacket. "Christian, please take a seat. We have a lot of ground to cover this morning." His hands dropped to his sides. A flash of confusion crossed his face, followed quickly by a spark of irritation. "Linda, this isn't the time for formality. I need my accounts unfrozen immediately, and I need the signed proxy papers. We have to finalize the acquisition of Apex Tech today." He gestured toward the empty leather folder sitting on the table in front of my chair. The folder that was supposed to contain my signed surrender. I walked calmly to the head of the table, my father's chair, and sat down. I opened the folder. It was entirely empty. "There will be no acquisition of Apex Tech, Christian," I said, my voice ringing clear and authoritative across the quiet room. "And there are no proxy papers." Christian froze. The board members exchanged glances. "Linda, what are you talking about?" He forced a laugh, looking around at the silent executives. "We agreed on this. You signed them on Friday." "I did no such thing," I replied, folding my hands on the table. I looked directly into his bloodshot hazel eyes. "I spent the weekend doing a deep dive into the company's financials, and what I found was enlightening." I nodded to Henry Croft. Henry pressed a button on a remote, and the massive screen behind me flickered to life. It displayed a complex web of financial transfers, highlighted in glaring red. "Over the past 6 months," Henry's gravelly voice filled the room, "Mr. Hayes has authorized the transfer of roughly $14 million from Sander Enterprises' operational funds into 3 offshore shell companies. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Uncle Arthur sat up straight, his face reddening. 14 million? Christian, what is the meaning of this? Christian's face turned the color of ash. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. This is a mistake. Those were legitimate R&D investments. Linda, you know this. You approved the budget. I approved a budget for a robotics subsidiary in Palo Alto. I corrected him sharply. I did not approve transfers to Coral Horizon Holdings in the Cayman Islands, a company which, according to our investigators, lists your personal secretary, Chloe Simmons, as its primary beneficiary. The name dropped like a bomb. Cynthia Rothschild let out a low whistle. This is absurd! Christian shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The panic was taking over now, stripping away his suave veneer. This is a setup! Linda, you are out of your mind! You have been sick. You aren't thinking clearly? I have never thought more clearly in my entire life. I cut him off, my voice dropping an octave, echoing with a lethal calm. I also took the liberty of looking into your Chicago trip, Christian. I pressed a button on my own tablet. The screen behind me switched from financial documents to a high-resolution photograph. It was a still from Leo's surveillance footage. It showed Christian and Chloe standing at the VIP desk of the Waldorf Astoria on Friday evening, Chloe clinging to his arm right before his card declined. I must say, Christian, I mocked gently, Chicago looks remarkably like the lobby of the Waldorf Astoria, and your tech conference colleagues look awfully good in Chanel. The boardroom was dead silent. The evidence was irrefutable. Embezzlement, fraud, adultery. It was a royal flush of betrayal, laid bare for the most powerful people in the city to see. You, Christian whispered, backing away from the table. He looked at me as if he was seeing a stranger. And he was. The naive, blindly loving Linda was dead. She had burned in a Mercedes on the Pacific Coast Highway. The woman sitting before him was forged in that fire. You knew. The bank freeze, the 1 cent, that was you. A penny for your thoughts, darling. I smiled, a cold, terrifying expression. You bitch! Christian lunged forward. Before he could take 3 steps, 2 massive security guards, men I had personally vetted and stationed inside the room before the meeting began, grabbed his arms, pinning him in place. He struggled wildly, his expensive shoes slipping on the polished marble floor. Let me go! He screamed, his face contorted in rage. I am your husband! I am the CEO! You are nothing, I stated, rising slowly from my chair. I walked around the long table until I was standing inches from him. I could smell the stale sweat and desperation radiating from his pores. As of 8 a.m. this morning, I invoked the morality and fraud clauses in our prenuptial agreement. You get nothing, Christian. The trust has seized all assets. Your position as CEO is terminated effective immediately. You can't do this. I'll sue you. I'll take half the company. With what lawyers, Christian? I tilted my head, studying him like an insect pinned to a board. You have exactly 1 penny to your name. No firm in the city will take you on contingency when they see the mountain of evidence we have. Furthermore, I pulled my phone from my pocket and checked the time. Right about now, the FBI is raiding the apartment of Chloe Simmons. She's being brought in for questioning regarding her role in wire fraud and corporate espionage. Christian stopped struggling. The fight drained out of him instantly. leaving only a hollow, terrified shell. "Chloe?" "Yes," I nodded. And knowing Chloe's deep loyalty to you, which she so clearly demonstrated on Park Avenue on Friday night, I give her roughly 10 minutes in a holding cell before she hands over every password, every hard drive, and every secret you've ever shared with her to secure a plea deal for herself. I leaned in, dropping my voice to a whisper so only he could hear. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out, Christian? Did you really think you could kill me and take my empire?" His eyes widened to the size of saucers. The breath hitched in his throat. He realized, in that singular moment, that I wasn't just talking about the embezzlement. He realized I knew about the cliff. I knew about the murder that hadn't even happened yet. "Take him out," I ordered the guards, turning my back on him. Linda, please!" Christian sobbed, his legs giving out as the guards dragged him backward toward the doors. "I'm sorry. I love you. It was a mistake." "Throw him out the front doors," I called out over my shoulder. "And make sure the paparazzi waiting outside get a good shot of him." The following weeks were a masterclass in total annihilation. I didn't just defeat Christian. I erased him. Evelyn Pierce, the most ruthless divorce and corporate litigator in Manhattan, handled the legal destruction. With the evidence I provided, the divorce was finalized in record time. The prenuptial agreement held up like a fortress of steel. Christian was stripped of every asset, every vehicle, and every piece of property tied to the Sander name. The federal investigation was the final nail in the coffin. Chloe Simmons, exactly as I predicted, sang like a canary. She turned over emails and encrypted messages detailing Christian's plan to drain the company accounts and flee to a non-extradition country. But I didn't let the authorities know about the murder plot. That was a timeline that no longer existed, an echo of a life I had narrowly escaped. Trying to prove a conspiracy for a crime that hadn't happened would have muddied the waters. Financial ruin and federal prison for fraud were more than enough. 6 months later, on a rainy Tuesday in April, I received a request. Christian Hayes, currently residing at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn awaiting sentencing, had requested a visitor. Me. Against Evelyn's advice, I went. I needed to see it. I needed to look into his eyes one last time and know that the ghost of the Pacific Coast Highway was finally laid to rest. The visiting room was stark, smelling of bleach and despair. I sat behind the thick plexiglass partition, wearing a simple black cashmere sweater. A few minutes later, the heavy steel door on the other side clanged open. A guard escorted Christian to the chair opposite mine. I almost didn't recognize him. The Golden Boy CEO was gone. He had lost at least 20 pounds, his cheekbones jutting out sharply beneath sallow skin. His hair, once his pride and joy, was dull and completely unstyled. The orange jumpsuit hung off his frame like a deflated balloon. He picked up the heavy black telephone receiver. I picked up mine. For a long minute, neither of us spoke. We just looked at each other through the scratched glass. "Why did you come?" he rasped. His voice sounded like sandpaper. "You invited me, Christian," I replied smoothly, leaning back in my chair. "I assumed you wanted to apologize, or beg." He let out a hollow, bitter laugh. "Beg? For what? You took everything. 30 years they're asking for, Linda. The prosecutors want 30 years for the wire fraud." "Actions have consequences," I said coldly. "You stole $14 million from my family." "I was your husband!" he suddenly yelled, slamming his hand against the glass, startling a guard in the corner. I made that company what it was. Your father was a dinosaur. I brought Sander into the 21st century. I deserve that money. You deserved a salary which you received generously, I corrected him, entirely unfazed by his outburst. You did not deserve the throne. Christian pressed his forehead against the glass, breathing heavily. He looked pathetic. A cornered rat that had finally realized the trap was inescapable. How did you know, Linda? He whispered, his eyes searching mine frantically. How did you know about the accounts? The Waldorf? Chloe? You were perfectly fine on Thursday night. You kissed me. You told me you loved me. And by Friday morning, you had dismantled my entire life with surgical precision. It's like you could see the future. I smiled. A slow, genuine smile that reached my eyes. Let's just say I had an epiphany, Christian. A sudden, burning realization of exactly what kind of man you were. I leaned closer to the glass. I saw exactly where my life with you was heading, and I decided to change the route. I would have been good to you, he lied, a desperate, pathetic final attempt at manipulation. If you had just signed the proxy papers, we could have ruled the world together. I loved you. You loved my bank accounts, I corrected him softly. And when those accounts ran dry, you didn't even have the dignity to stand on your own 2 feet. You are a parasite, Christian, and parasites don't survive when the host decides to fight back. I stood up, placing the receiver back on the cradle. Wait! Christian shouted through the glass, his voice muffled now. Linda, don't leave! Tell my lawyer to offer a settlement! Linda! I didn't look back. I walked out of the sterile visiting room, through the heavy security doors, and out into the crisp spring air. My driver was waiting by the Rolls-Royce. He opened the door for me. Back to the office, Ms. Sander? He asked. No, Thomas, I said, sliding into the luxurious leather seat. I looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline in the distance. The city belonged to me. The empire was secure, and I was alive. Take me home. The nightmare was over. The assets were frozen. The betrayer was caged, and the heiress was reborn. I had learned the ultimate lesson of power. Trust is a luxury, but vengeance? Vengeance is a necessity. And my ledger was finally perfectly balanced. For a year, I breathed the sweet, intoxicating air of absolute victory. Sander Enterprises was thriving under my sole command. Christian was a fading memory, a cautionary tale whispered in the corridors of Manhattan's elite country clubs, currently serving his 3rd month of a 3-decade sentence. The press had dubbed me the Ice Queen of Wall Street, a moniker I wore like a crown of diamonds. I thought I had rewritten my destiny. I thought the fire that took my life in the previous timeline was completely extinguished. I was wrong. The match had been struck by Christian, but I had yet to find the man who poured the gasoline. It started with a minor discrepancy, a ghost in the machine of our quarterly financial reports. I was sitting in my penthouse office late one Tuesday evening, nursing a glass of Macallan 18, reviewing the blind trust that Henry Croft had so meticulously set up for me on the day of my rebirth. Something felt off. It wasn't an overt theft. It was an anomaly in the yield. A fraction of a % of the dividends from our European real estate holdings was being routed through a series of complex subsidiary shell companies before returning to the main ledger. It was a skimming operation so sophisticated, so deeply buried in the architecture of the trust, that an army of forensic accountants would have missed it. But I wasn't just an accountant. I was a woman who had died for this money. I knew every cent. I called Leo Harrington. The private investigator arrived at my penthouse at midnight, looking disheveled but sharply awake. "You're paying double for the graveyard shift, boss," Leo grunted, dropping his leather jacket onto one of my Barcelona chairs. "I'll pay triple if you find what I'm looking for," I replied, sliding a thick file across the glass desk. "Look at the routing numbers on page 12. The offshore account is named Aegis Capital. It's siphoning exactly 0.4% off the top of my blind trust." Leo whistled low, tracing the numbers with a calloused finger. "A skimming job. Beautifully executed, too. It's disguised as automated administrative fees. Whoever set this up had root access to your entire financial architecture." The blood in my veins turned to ice. There was only one person on Earth who had that level of access. The man who had drafted the trust. The man who had stood by my father's side for 30 years. The man who had helped me freeze Christian out. "Henry Croft," I whispered, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. "Your golden retriever wealth manager?" Leo raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Guy seems like he bleeds sander blue." "Find out!" I commanded, my voice trembling with a sudden violent rage. "Dig into Aegis Capital. Dig into Henry's private communications. Dig until your hands bleed, Leo. I need to know everything." It took Leo 3 days. When he returned, the look in his eyes wasn't his usual cynical amusement. It was grim. He didn't just bring financial documents. He brought a heavy, encrypted hard drive. He plugged it into my laptop, his face illuminated by the harsh blue light of the screen. "Linda," Leo started, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "Christian wasn't the mastermind behind the embezzlement a year ago. He was the fall guy, a useful idiot." Leo clicked a folder, bringing up a series of recovered, deleted emails between Henry Croft and an anonymous Proton mail address that Leo had traced to Christian's old burner phone. I read the text, my stomach plummeting into an endless abyss. From R. Croft to D. Hayes. Date, October 10th, 2025, 4 days before my rebirth. Christian, the proxy papers must be signed by the 17th. Once you have controlling shares, the unfortunate accident on the Pacific Coast Highway can proceed as discussed. Do not fail this. If the brakes on the Mercedes are not properly disabled, she will survive. Once she is gone, I will secure the board's compliance, and my 40% equity transfer will be executed as agreed. I stopped breathing. The room spun. Henry. It had been Henry all along. Christian was too arrogant, too reckless to plan a perfect murder. He needed a seasoned predator to guide him. Henry wanted 40% of my empire, and he was willing to let his best friend's daughter burn to death to get it. When I woke up in the past and ordered Henry to freeze Christian's assets, Henry hadn't been acting out of loyalty. He had realized Christian was compromised. Like a true snake, Henry instantly shed his alliance with Christian, played the faithful servant, and used the chaos of the divorce to embed a skimming protocol into my new blind trust. He was playing the long game, slowly bleeding the empire dry while I patted him on the back. I gripped the edge of my desk until my knuckles turned white. Christian was the weapon, but Henry Croft was the one who aimed it. "What do you want to do?" Leo asked quietly. "I can take this to the feds right now. Conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, the whole 9 yards." "No," I said, my voice eerily calm. A familiar glacial clarity was washing over me, the same clarity I felt when I left Christian with 1 penny. "The feds will tie this up in court for years. Henry has enough offshore money to hire a dozen defense teams. He'd delay, appeal, and probably die of old age before he ever saw the inside of a cell. I stood up, walking toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering Manhattan skyline. I don't just want him in prison, Leo. I want to break him. I want to strip him of his legacy, his reputation, and his freedom in front of the entire world he thinks he rules. The plan took 2 months of meticulous, agonizingly careful preparation. Every time I saw Henry, every time we sat in a boardroom together, I had to force a warm smile. I had to ask about his wife's garden in the Hamptons. I had to pretend he wasn't the architect of my brutal, fiery death in another life. I laid the bait at the Sander Enterprises annual Winter Gala. It was the most exclusive event of the season, held in the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel. The guest list was a who's who of global finance, politicians, and socialites. I wore a custom blood-red Valentino gown. It felt appropriate. Midway through the evening, amidst the clinking of crystal champagne flutes and the soft hum of a string quartet, I pulled Henry aside into a private VIP lounge overlooking the ballroom. "Henry, thank you for stepping away," I said, offering him a brilliant manufactured smile. "Anything for you, Linda," Henry replied warmly, sipping his scotch. He looked every bit the distinguished elder statesman of finance in his tailored tuxedo. "You look spectacular tonight. Your father would be so proud of what you've accomplished this past year." It took physical restraint not to throw my drink in his face. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about," I said, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I've been quietly negotiating a massive acquisition, a buyout of the Vanguard Tech portfolio." Henry's eyes widened slightly. Vanguard Tech was a $50 billion titan. "Linda, that's ambitious, but Sander Liquid Capital is currently locked in the blind trust." "I know," I nodded, "which is why I need you to unlock it. I need $2 billion transferred into a holding escrow by tomorrow morning to show proof of funds, or Vanguard walks away." I handed him a sealed envelope. Inside was a document authorizing the transfer, signed with my distinct signature. But the routing number on the escrow account wasn't a standard corporate holding. It was a honeypot. A digitally mirrored account I had set up with Benjamin Reed, a senior investigator at the SEC whom I had discreetly retained. Henry looked at the document, his mind visibly racing. I knew exactly what he was thinking. $2 billion in a temporary, loosely monitored escrow. It was too tempting. With his back-end access, he could siphon a massive chunk of it into Aegis Capital before the Vanguard deal closed, blaming the loss on a market fluctuation or a routing error. "This is highly irregular, Linda. A transfer of this magnitude, I usually need board approval." "We don't have time for the board, Henry," I pressed, injecting a tone of desperate ambition into my voice. "This is my legacy. I trust you. You're the only one who can execute this quietly." "I trust you." The magic words. Henry slowly smiled, folding the document and slipping it into his tuxedo pocket. "Very well, Linda. For your father's legacy, I will initiate the transfer from my secure terminal tonight." "Thank you, Henry." I beamed. "You are truly a lifesaver." The irony tasted delicious. I left him in the lounge and walked down the grand staircase into the ballroom. I spotted Benjamin Reed by the ice sculpture, wearing a sharp navy suit, holding a club soda. I caught his eye and gave a subtle, single nod. The trap was set. At 11:30 p.m., the gala was in full swing. I was on the dance floor with the mayor of New York when my smartwatch vibrated twice. A message from Leo. "The rat is in the maze. He's initiating the transfer. I excused myself gracefully and made my way to the hotel's business center, which Leo had commandeered for the night. The room was dark, lit only by the glow of 3 massive monitors. Benjamin Reed was standing behind Leo, his arms crossed, his face a mask of professional shock. "He's actually doing it," Benjamin muttered as I walked in. "He's bypassing the escrow. He's routing $250 million directly from the Sander Trust into a Cayman proxy account under Aegis Capital. Let him finish the keystrokes," I said coldly, watching the progress bar on Leo's screen. "I want the digital footprint entirely complete. I want him holding the bag." We watched in silence as the progress bar hit 100%. "Transfer complete. Got him?" Leo grinned, hitting a key that immediately locked the network, trapping the funds in the monitored SEC mirror account. "The money is frozen, and his IP address, authorization codes, and digital signature are permanently burned into the federal ledger." Benjamin pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. We have teams standing by." "Give me 5 minutes," I requested, turning toward the door. "I want to break the news to him myself." I found Henry in the coat check area. He was putting on his cashmere overcoat, a smug, satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He thought he had just stolen $250 million from a naive little girl. "Leaving so soon, Henry?" I asked, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. He turned, slightly startled. "Ah, Linda. Yes, it's late, and I have an early morning. I wanted to let you know the transfer has been taken care of." "I know," I said, stopping a few feet away from him. The coat check attendant had discreetly vanished, leaving us entirely alone in the opulent foyer. "I watched you do it." Henry's smirk faltered. "I beg your pardon?" "I watched you route $250 million into Aegis Capital," I said, my voice dropping the facade of warmth, turning into a blade of pure ice. "A very sloppy move, Henry. Christian was an amateur, but I expected better from the man who plotted my murder." The color drained from Henry's face so fast I thought he might faint. His eyes darted around the empty hall, a sudden primal panic setting in. "Linda, you must have had too much champagne. I don't know what you're talking about." "I know about the emails, Henry." I took a step closer, backing him against the mahogany counter. "I know about October 10th. I know you told Christian to cut the brakes on my Mercedes. I know you orchestrated the entire thing so you could steal my father's company." He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The distinguished elder statesman was gone, replaced by a terrified, cornered animal. "How?" he finally choked out, his hands trembling violently. "How could you possibly know about the emails? I wiped the servers. I destroyed Christian's phone." "You made one fatal mistake, Henry," I whispered, leaning in so close he could smell my expensive perfume. "You underestimated me. You thought I was a fragile heiress waiting to be slaughtered. But fire does strange things to a person. It burns away the weakness. It burns away the blind trust." "Linda, please!" Henry practically begged, his voice cracking. "We can make a deal. I will give you everything back. I'll give you my own equity. Just don't do this. I was your father's best friend." "If you were my father's friend, you wouldn't have tried to kill his only daughter," I spat, the anger finally boiling over, raw and devastating. "You used my husband as a weapon to destroy me, and now I am using your own greed to bury you." The heavy oak doors of the foyer swung open. 4 FBI agents, wearing tactical vests over their suits, strode into the room. Behind them walked Benjamin Reed. "Henry Croft," the lead agent announced, pulling out a pair of heavy steel handcuffs. "You are under arrest for grand larceny, wire fraud, corporate espionage, and conspiracy to commit murder. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." Henry looked at the agents, then at me. His legs gave out. He collapsed onto his knees on the polished marble floor, a pathetic, sobbing mess. "Linda! Linda, please!" he wailed as the agents hauled him roughly to his feet, snapping the cuffs around his wrists. "I'm an old man. I'll die in prison." "Then I suggest you get comfortable with the dark, Henry," I said, my face completely devoid of emotion. I watched as they dragged him out of the hotel, the flashing red and blue lights of the federal vehicles outside illuminating the grand glass doors. The foyer fell silent again. I stood there for a long moment, the adrenaline slowly leaving my system, replaced by a profound, unshakable peace. I touched the diamond necklace at my throat. Christian was in a cage. Henry was in chains. The ghost of the Pacific Coast Highway had finally been banished. I hadn't just survived my rebirth, I had conquered it. I turned and walked back toward the ballroom. The music was still playing. The Empire was still standing. And I was exactly where I belonged, at the very top, untouchable, unbreakable, and entirely free. Wow, what a wild ride. From freezing Christian with exactly 1 cent to taking down the ultimate mastermind, Henry Croft, Linda truly proved why you should never mess with a reborn heiress. Her revenge was an absolute masterclass in strategy, patience, and ruthless execution. Which part of Linda's vengeance was your favorite? The Waldorf Astoria humiliation, or the ultimate trap at the gala? Let me know down in the comments. If you loved this story of betrayal, karma, and ultimate boss energy, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with your friends who love a good revenge plot, and subscribe to the channel for more crazy, dramatic, real-life stories. Ring that notification bell so you never miss out on the tea. See you in the next one.